that psychologists are always coming in too late.
Everything sort of starts from top down. So anything that the people above do, it kind of trickles down to the players themselves.
One day think, oh, my son is addicted to a game.
Sort of prevention is better than cure. Develop the person as well as the player.
Let's say for the audience, who are you as a person?
Okay, so my name is John Brain. I'm from the French part of Belgium, so I speak French fluently.
Three languages.
So yeah, no Dutch today, Paul. I'm sorry.
I was hoping.
Ja, ik spreek een beetje Nederlands, maar not a lot.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm currently studying for a professional doctorate at the University of Portsmouth, and my research is centered around sort of esports psychology at the minute. I'm also training to become a registered psychologist with the Health and Care Professions Council in the UK.
Super nice.
Yeah.
So how long has the part of psychologist has been here for a long time, of course, but like when you specify it to esports, how long has that been in the business?
I wouldn't be able
or you don't take it different. You see it the same.
No, I think the implementation of sports psychologists specifically, I think is something very recent, and it's something that has only been, I would say, in the last 5 years or 6 years, really, there's been an important shift. A lot of traditional sports psychologists are starting to work in the esports space because they're seeing that some of the demands are quite similar to traditional sports, the psychological demands, that is. But what's really interesting is that the esports setting is very unique and it has its own challenges. So these practitioners really have to adapt to the setting as well. So there is still a lot of work to do, I think, in understanding how sports psychologists can best provide their services to esports players, esports coaches, and esports organizations. It's getting there. It's really advancing. And I think esports organizations as a whole are really seeing the benefits of psychology support as well.
I think what I've seen, of course, I have had my own teams and my own fair share in esports. The psychologists are always coming in too late. Mostly teams don't know how necessary it is to have these people in your team, because if you have a group of 5 players, for example, playing a game like Rainbow Six or Counter-Strike, also these guys, they need to maintain a relationship among themselves, and sometimes it just doesn't go properly,
Yeah.
And I think that's also where you jump in as well, to speak with these people, see where their platforms are lying, where they're walking against right now. And this is something that is missed a lot, I feel, in the scene.
Yeah.
Something that, of course, the more tier 1 professional teams take this and know this is important. But the newer teams, you suddenly see a player Burnout stops playing from one to another moment because he can't handle it. Because social media, a lot of people are looking at him. At the same time, he needs to perform. And then also you have school, you have your family at home, etc. And people are looking at you.
And I really like the point that you made about psychologists come in almost too late, and they almost serve as a sort of plaster on the wound. And this is sort of a common misconception in sports psychology, is that it can only help when problems arise. So like I said, putting that bandage on the wound, but actually sports psychology can prevent the wound from happening in a sense, or treat it better. So sort of prevention is better than cure. So rather than wait for the problems to arise, you can help players and help coaches develop the necessary mental skills for them to better overcome certain barriers or challenges that they will experience in esports performance, for example.
I've seen that myself.
Yeah.
When people get a burnout and you have it, it's already too late. So mostly, like you said, it's better to be there before, instead of putting a band-aid on having a burnout, and before you have symptoms of people not being able to focus anymore, not being able to sleep properly, being really tired all day, don't want to come out of their bed. All these different symptoms lead up to this, and this is something you should know or beforehand when you jump into an organization. It shouldn't be there that people already can't do anything anymore. When it arises, you can address and take the appropriate steps with these players to make sure they can continue and fight against this.
100%. I completely agree. And I really think players in esports should really be encouraged to, if they're really motivated and want to take their game and their sort of health and well-being to the next level, and really ensure that everything is put in place correctly, that they can seek psychology support. It's not only when there's a problem, you know. Psychologists are there for a reason. They're there to sort of support them in any way they can. So yeah, that's sort of one message I'd love to kind of share in the esports setting. And it happens in traditional sports as well. It's not only in esports, but just that a psychologist is not only there for when there's problems, but they can support you and build those mental skills to better face those challenges. So yeah.
When you start working with a player, how does this go? How does this start? How do you start the process, for example?
So for me, the key aspect is really building a rapport with the player. I don't want to rush too much. So let's say they come to me. I really want to understand themselves as a person outside of esports, for example. I want to understand themselves as a player. I want to understand sort of the social support that they're receiving around them, what type of support the org is providing, what type of support their family members, their friends are sort of providing them with. And this is all done in sort of like an intake session. These can last 1 or 2, depending on the length of the conversations. But that's how it kind of starts, really. It's really nothing too major, but just understanding the person who is in front of me, essentially. And then what I like to do is sort of feed back to the client, so to the esport player, and what I've sort of observed and what I've picked out. I like for the process to be sort of like a collaborative process with my clients. So I like to share with them what I've identified. And then we can come to an agreement on some action plans and some ways we can go about addressing their concern or their issue, or just anything that they particularly want to work on. I hope that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, it does. So it's more like a step-to-step thing, yeah?
Exactly.
You don't rush it. You don't say, okay, we're jumping into it right now. You have to go to the gym at 8 a.m. You have to wake up at 6 a.m. Tomorrow it starts. You can't change your life anymore. You're doing it gradually, I think.
100%. And a big part of my approach is really making the player understand that I'm not really there to tell them what to do, because behavior change, as we know, as psychologists, is complex. Telling someone to do something rarely sort of stimulates any change. It has to come from within the person. So it's this thing called intrinsic motivation. And yeah, that's kind of my approach, is to guide and support them, but not really tell them what to do. So I like to always leave some space between sessions, for not sessions to be too regular, so then they can use that 7 to 10 days to sort of reflect on what we discussed in that previous session.
Isn't it more that now the narrative on social media tells you that stuff has to change day to day?
Yeah.
Isn't that a problem you have to deal with every time, that you're like, okay, we'll speak in 7 days, and these guys are like, what? Why not tomorrow? Because I think it's being pushed online that's like, stop now, stop bitching, start doing, you know, immediately, like change. But I think a lot of, like you said, habits or a person, you as a person, you grow habits and you get your habits. It's not changed within a day.
100%. I think that time is necessary for growth, for a player to experience growth, for them to experience more of an awareness of themselves and their behaviors. For me, that time is the most important. It's, if not more important than the session itself, because the changes happen outside the sessions, not in the sessions. The sessions are just there to guide and support the player and sort of provide a different perspective on the situation. The world of esports is a very fast-paced one. The world of elite sport is a very fast-paced one. Results matter. So I completely resonate and understand that you need change quickly. But unfortunately, psychology doesn't work like that. It's more of a sort of long-term, on a long-term basis.
The big question. Why Lions Creed?
He reached out to Dale Adams, who's the chief operating officer currently at Lions Creed. I had a previous contact with him because I was actually seeking participants for my master studies, which was looking at esports injuries. So how esports players kind of cope with injuries. I let him know that I was really interested in sort of entering the esports space and starting to work there with the team. I think everything sort of lined up and Lions Creed were interested in sort of my services. And he took me through the sort of roadmap that they were looking towards and sort of the goals and ambitions of the organizations. And I just had a great feeling about it. I really felt that they were a really ambitious organization, lots of different people around. And as you probably noticed, there's a lot of new arrivals this month. So you can clearly see how ambitious and how motivated the org is. And I
You'll
just
be
felt
busy.
exactly I'll be very, very busy, but in a positive way. No, yeah, I'm really excited to get cracking with them. I've been with them for like around a month now, so yeah, just trying to figure out who's who does what, get to know the staff and the players a bit more. But so far they've been so welcoming, so helpful. So yeah, I'm just really pleased to have joined Lions Creed.
Yeah, but is it only the players, or you're also going to go after the staff in the end?
Yeah, so one of my key goals in these first couple of months is really for the staff and the organization as a whole to understand what my role is as a sports psychologist. So I'm really looking to provide a lot of education on what I actually do and the important role, like you said, that they have in the players' performances, because everything sort of starts from top down. So
Yeah.
anything that the people above do, it kind of trickles down to the players themselves. So it's really about establishing that healthy culture, that ambitious culture, keep the ambitions going, work with the organization's strengths, talking to the staff and understanding what their role is with regards to the players, how supportive they are to the players, is really important for me. And that's sort of been my strategy so far.
That's something I've seen before in esports as well, that a lot of people just focus on the players, but they forget the management that's above it. Yeah. Players and staff, they're both equally important. And as you said, you start from the top and you work to the bottom. I think that's a great choice. The CEO, you start talking to him, understanding, and he's the guy that's mostly just super busy all day long.
Yeah, it's like you said, it's never easy getting in touch with these busy guys, but once you get that chance, it's fantastic, just to learn more about themselves and how they operate. And like you said, some of the demands that they experience, it's being at that level, being higher up in the organization can be very stressful. So it's also my role to kind of ensure that they have sort of a support system in place, and they can come and talk to me about anything they want. So yeah, organizational stress is very much present. I can completely understand and be empathetic towards that.
Have you ever worked for other esports companies?
Yes. So
or Lions Creed is the first one?
So actually, during my masters, I sort of did an internship with esports organization G Science. They've been acquired now by Adamas Esports, but sort of my role there initially, because I was not yet qualified to provide psychology support, was to provide educational content to their clients, so their partnering organizations. So this was in the form of infographic, videos, carousels. So yeah, it was very much educational based. And then once I started my professional training, I transitioned to working as a performance psychologist. And I was responsible to support the Prodigy agency's players that they had a collaboration with at the time. So yeah, that was sort of my journey and my first taste of esports, let's say, as a sports psychologist.
But do you like it more instead of making infographics, making movies? Do you like it more to be jumping in there with the players and the staff and the managers and talking to them, learning who they are?
100%. I think this is what I've been waiting for the past 7 years. Well, at the time, learn all the theory. Like I said, during the past 7 years, during my university studies, during my sort of internships, now I was really ready to just get cracking and actually helping people and making an impact. I think there's nothing more rewarding than that. And being able to finally do it was amazing.
How it is with these players, you're also working with Fortnite players, and in my experience from the past, they are not the easiest to contact. And what's your plans for the future with these guys?
Luckily, Fortnite is one of the esports I'm most familiar with, having played it myself a couple of years ago. Not really. I was a console player, so I was very limited on what I could do, and I was a controller player, obviously. So
yeah.
I stopped when people were getting too good at the game. So yeah, I knew my time was up.
I stopped when it started. Everyone was better than me. Some old guy jumping in that game, and I was getting destroyed by 15-year-olds everywhere.
That's what's impressive is that, these 15-year-olds, their ability, their mental ability to sort of rapidly respond to these complex visual stimuli and have these fast reflexes is better than most 20-year-olds. So that's why I obviously think that most of the Fortnite players are at that age, are around 15. So Yeah, like you said, I think what's different with Fortnite is that the majority of players are quite young. So obviously, my approach as a psychologist will look much different from working with an older athlete or an older esports player.
Okay. What are your plans now for them, for Lion Street?
I forgot to answer
No,
that.
no worries, no worries. I'll just ask again. I'll keep asking.
For me, it's just to act as a support system for the players if they have any emerging issues that they encounter. And this could be sort of coping with pre-performance stress or anxiety, coping with tilt, if they have issues with confidence or self-esteem, if they have issues regulating their emotions during games, because I know Fortnite can be very frustrating at times, especially with packet loss or lag, or your walls not placing, edits not going through. So yeah, it's can be frustrating, but I'm here to support the players with that, and sort of performing under pressure, performing in clutch moments.
Sorry, but will you be in calls with them during games as well? Will you start playing that as well? Like, hey guys, listen, I'm gonna be with you in a game right now to see how you're going, see how you're talking, your communication is, etc. Is that more for a coach?
This is something I was actually considering, and I don't think it's been done quite a lot from my knowledge so far. But it does make sense what you're saying, because sports psychologists do accompany the players during LAN competitions, for example. They are there when they're performing. So because obviously everything is done remotely, my work right now with Lionscreed, it would actually be very interesting to be in calls when they're playing with them. But like you said, this might kind of coincide with their preferences as players. I don't want to breach their sort of privacy, but yeah.
I think it will help them in the end, because if a player starts tilting after 2 games, they need to reset, and it's not easy for a player to remember how to reset. Sometimes you need as a professional in that call to be able to guide them directly when that happens. You'll see that they are changing their mental behavior as well, that they'll become stronger as a player, and that they'll cope with these issues. As for example, they're getting sniped or whatever happened, they die mid-game and they're not going to play. A lot of people give up. They're like, forget about it. That's it. But if you have a person like you next to them in that call, reset their mindset, start over again, you can suddenly see a lot of things can happen.
Yeah. That's a very interesting point. And what I would sort of answer to that is my role as well as a sports psychologist is for them to sort of operate independently from sort of my constant support. So
100%.
My goal is for them to develop those skills, those necessary skills, to be able to cope with it themselves, because I'm not always going to be there in that call. I'm not always going to be available when they have competition. So a huge part of my work is to ensure that they develop those mental skills to regulate their emotions. I think it would be definitely interesting, maybe at the start, to sort of, maybe for me as well, to observe how they sort of respond in difficult situations and let them know that I'm there to support them. But I think in the long run, my goal is really to encourage them and to push them to operate independently of my constant support as a psychologist. That's one of my key goals, I think.
Oh, that's good. I like that a lot. I mean, that would, I think, really bring a lot of value for you as well as a psychologist, because you'll see their behavioral patterns, I guess, during their games when they're most stressed. Because mostly when I'm in a one-on-one conversation with you now, it's relaxed, we're good. But when we hang up and I go back into my game, for example, mindset changes, my stress levels are way higher. And when something happens that I can't control, I'll become angry. And at that point, you need to learn to reset. So do you have a tip for that, for example, for players that are, for young players that are watching us, or parents? Because you have to deal with a lot of different factors.
I think for the parents, it would be really useful for parents just to be as supportive as possible, not only in providing their child or the players just with the sort of equipment, the sort of monitors, keyboards, etc., but just provide also some emotional support. So maybe just ask them about how their game went, maybe look at what tournaments they're competing in, etc. And I think this can really make a difference. Just creating that open dialogue with their child, I think is key. Just making sure that making sure that the child understands that he has got a support system around them. I think that would be the key for me as a parent. But It's actually really interesting because I think a lot of parents they're under the impression that they're really supporting their child by providing them with the resources that they need to do whatever they need to do, right? To game, etc. But like that sort of emotional support is just very underrated, I think.
Yeah.
And showing you're interested in what they're doing as well. It can be very hard to understand what they're doing a bit of research, just sort of understanding what, or even asking their child to explain what esports is, what Fortnite is, what are sort of the demands and sort of stresses that they experience. I think, like you said, communication is so key as a parent, asking those questions.
Doing a bit of research as well on what your
Yeah.
child is doing, I think, is important. A lot of children a lot of parents just see their child rage running down, or they call them for dinner and they rage because they have a tournament at that point. The parents don't know. Communication is zero
Yeah.
between those people, and they think, oh, my son is addicted to a game. But if you understand what he's going through, where he's at, what he's doing, and you help him in a sort of way, you know, like you said, in the support system, not only by giving him stuff, but also emotionally helping a child.
100%. It's funny because when I was younger, my parents didn't really see the value of me gaming. Like they didn't really understand it. But I think gaming and just esports in general is also, it's a very social thing, right? When you hop in a Discord call with your friends, it's like it's a social sort of event. You know, you're chatting about life, etc. And I think the older generation, which is completely normal, but they don't really understand this, that there is really a social value to be had with sort of esports and gaming. So when I tell them now that I'm looking to pursue a career in esports, it's funny because it wasn't they would never have thought this when I was playing games, that it would actually be useful, because I think that's another thing. A lot of parents might think that gaming is a waste of time, but yeah, like I said, you can learn a lot of things through gaming. You can learn a lot of skills. But
I remember back in the days when I was younger, I mean, this is around the beginning of the 2000s, that my parents used to turn the internet off,
yeah,
you know, the dial-up. And I would like wait for 1 hour in my bed and then just sneakily crawl downstairs, put the internet on, go upstairs, take my blanket, put it over my computer screen, and just cover it myself into like a little black hole, and then play the game all night long. So the light would not disperse in my room everywhere. So you see like light flickering all the time. I was in my blanket. As a child, you also evolve because you learn a lot. But what you said now, there's so much information for parents online right now that they can learn from, especially just listening to what we have spoken about in this podcast as well.
one thing I would say is that for organizations, I would highly encourage esports organizations to get in touch with the parents. You know, I think parents are organizations' biggest ally, because they're the people that, especially for obviously the minors, they're the people that see them the most, and they're the people that can sort of encourage that behavior change if it's needed for the players. So like throw those little cues in, you know. Parents also should try and just monitor how much time their child is spending on the game. I think it's really important. Unfortunately, in sort of the world of esports right now, there's a grind culture. So the idea that the more you train, the better you're going to be. But that can sometimes get to the expense of the esports players' health and well-being. And then it can lead to a lot of serious sort of consequences, like we talked about burnout. So I think it's really important. And that's my role actually as a sports psychologist as well, is to try and find that balance with the players, find solutions on how can we keep your performance be at the top level, but also maintain that sort of health and well-being. So how can we find time to exercise? How can we find time to sort of disconnect from esports?
I think what you just said, I think that's the big difference between a social gamer and a professional gamer. Being a professional gamer can be pretty lonely.
Yeah.
Being a social gamer is ecstatic with all your friends. You're playing day in, day out.
Yeah.
But as a professional player, you say, I'm doing the grind, so I'm playing 24/7. In the end, you create fatigue, you're less focused, you shoot less better, you'll think better, less better. So you have to always, in my eyes, be efficient with what you do on a daily basis. Make a schedule for yourself so your mind is ready and set for it. Your food as well. You know, your nutrition is key, what you eat. But remember, if you want to be a professional, it's possible that you don't have that many friends left in the end. Because, like I said, the road to there is not being online 24/7. It's about using the right tools at the right moment and making sure you get enough rest.
100%. Yeah. Rest is very underrated in my opinion,
Yeah.
in esports. But another aspect I was going to mention is that during my work at Lions Grid, I'm really looking to try and develop the players holistically. So what I mean by that is help them develop as players, of course, but as people as well. So a big part of my role is sort of to ensure that they develop skills that they can apply outside of esports, so in daily life. Because we all know the career of an esports player can be very short. It has an expiration date, just like any sort of traditional sport. Athletes do retire. It's inevitable. So it's really important that during their career, they develop some important skills. And I'm talking about communication, confidence, being able to solve problems. So yeah, problem solving. These skills are really important for them to develop, because let's say they get a job after esports, how that transition can be very difficult. If all you know for the past 5 years or so is esports, I'm an esports player, and then that is taken away from you from one day to the other, players can really struggle during this period. So to sort of alleviate and make that transition a bit smoother, that's sort of a strategy that I'd love to put in place at Lions Grid, and I think a lot of orgs in general should look at as well. Develop the person as well as the player. And I also think, just to add, you know me, I can talk about this for hours, but just to sort of add to that, is a way you can do that is to help players find interest outside of esports. So I know this can be very difficult. It doesn't have to be so different. It can be content creation, it can be streaming, it can be all these different things, but it can also be, sports, reading, art, drawing, anything, because these activities can support that development of skills, and it sort of holistically develops the person as well, and the player. So yeah, that's one aspect that I'm really looking to try and implement at my time anyways at Lions Grid.
Well, I think it'll be really interesting to just see how Lions Grid will evolve as well. Like I said before, is that Lions Grid is a really quickly growing organization that is taking the right steps to move forward. Also getting you on board, knowing that it's important for the players, you having the right mindset as well, to wanting to change, to help to change these players, to get them to the right mindset, to get them in control of themselves, of their feelings and of their behaviors, so they know what's going on, they can adjust, and to become professional athletes.
Exactly.
And I think that journey is going to be super interesting. And what I would like to suggest, John, is also talk a bit more later on, have other podcasts about these subjects, because I feel like we can continue for hours just about your job in Lions Grid. But I feel like if we break it down in certain subjects and then speak about a certain subject for half an hour, it will be really interesting as well, information-wise, for people to listen and learn from you as a professional.
100%. I'm up for it.
Sweet. So I want to thank you for your time today. And if you want to close off with something.
Ooh, the pressure is on. No, I just want to say thanks so much, Paul, for having me on. It's been a pleasure. It's always nice to talk about what I do, but yeah, I'm looking forward to future collaborations, and yeah.
Sounds good. Thanks, John. Take care.